Hi, with us now, Dave Wedge, the author of a brand new book, Blood and Hate, the untold story of Marvelous Marvin Hagler's battle for glory. Dave, I'm excited to have you in because he was one of my favorite fighters, Marvin Hagler was. And I've always thought the middleweight division, when I was a kid and Marvin was great, was one of the best divisions ever. You had Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Iran Barkley, Thomas Hearns, and this guy might have been the best of all of them.
Yeah, Marvin was a great fighter, and it's funny, that's a big part of the book is when that division started to take off with those fighters you talked about. Before that, boxing was all about the heavyweights. And this group that you're referring to, and you know, some people say the four kings, Duran, Leonard, Hearns, and Hagler, and then the others were the next tier down. They say they're the ones that really brought these lower weight divisions to prominence throughout the future. Guys like Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, you know, these great fighters we've had over the past few generations. Really, these guys opened the door for that.
And you tell an interesting story in the book that Tip O'Neill and Senator Kennedy were really in Marvin's corner and put the pressure on Don King to get him a title shot.
Yeah, so Marvin was beating everybody. He had 49 fights. He had lost 2 early in his career, but he was basically 49-0 at the time, you know, 49-2, whatever. And he wasn't given the shot. And the boxing industry in the 70s was very corrupt. There was a ranking scandal that involved Don King. And yeah, Ted Kennedy and Tip O'Neill stepped in, went to Don King, went to Bob Arum, said, listen, give our guy a shot or we're going to launch a congressional investigation into the fight game. And it ended up working because Marvin got his title shot.
He did. And you talk about that title fight and him winning the title, which was in England against Mincer at the time, right? Alan Mincer.
That's right.
And just the racial tension behind that fight, too.
Yeah, so really, you know, first of all, this book is a passion project for me. I grew up in Brockton, so I wanted to pay my respects to Marvin and give him his due once and for all. To me, you know, everyone talks about the Leonard fight and Hearns and Duran and all that, but to me, the essence of Marvin Hagler's spirit is that Minter fight. He was fighting the rigged industry, as we just said. He finally gets his title fight, and it's against this guy that's backed by a white power group in England, and they have this racially explosive fight at Wembley Arena. And I don't want to give away the whole story, but any sports fan knows Marvin wins the fight, obviously. He became the champion. But after that, he and his entourage were pelted with bottles. A riot broke out. They were run out of the arena. And it's really one of the most disgraceful events that's ever happened in sports. So that's really, and Marvin survived that, gets his belt, and goes on to greatness. That's really the story I wanted to tell with this book.
I always thought the Sugar Ray Leonard fight, because I remember watching that, and I was in the 7th grade, and I remember just... Sugar Ray was this charismatic guy. I think he was on the cover of Wheaties when I was a kid. He had the 7-Up commercial, and I'm like, Marvin beat him. I mean, I know I was biased because I'm from here and I was a big Hagler fan, but I thought Marvin beat him, and then it didn't seem like Marvin was ever the same after that.
He wasn't, and he never fought again, you know, but I think, you know, Marvin and Sugar Ray's...
Why did they fight again? There was so much money there. Sugar Ray didn't want to fight him?
I just think Marvin, you know, was disgusted with the decision. That was, and I write about a couple other decisions in this book that were equally disgusting early in Marvin's career, one against Vito Antuofermo and one against a guy named Boogaloo Watts down in Philly. So Marvin had already been really raked over the coals by the boxing industry and, you know, crooked judges and all that stuff. He had enough, and he had enough money that he didn't have to fight again. He probably left $100 million on the table, but at the time he was living in Italy. He had met his new wife, and he was getting remarried.
He became an actor there, Spaghetti Western, which I always thought was so wild.
Yeah.
How did that even come about?
Well, look, we have Arnold Schwarzenegger here, you know, and people like that. Jesse the Body Ventura, and Marvin went over there, and he became that sort of figure in Italy. And
he was already big there?
He was big as a fighter. You know, everyone, you know, at that point, Marvin Hagler was a global superstar. And I think when he went to Italy, people really loved him. When he started acting in the movies, he became a superstar over there. Same thing. He was in advertisements and all that, and he was a household name. And I just think after that fight, he thought to himself, why go back? Why go backwards? Why go back to the United States? Have to answer all the questions in the run-up to the rematch. You know, all the corruption that went on and all the things he dealt with, have to relive the decision. I think he just moved on with his life.
What did you learn about, as a kid that grew up in Brockton and loved Marvin Hagler as I did, what did you learn that just shocked you in this book?
The biggest thing that I learned writing this book was I always was under the impression Marvin grew up in Brockton, but
he's from Newark.
He actually grew up in Newark, and he didn't move to Brockton until he was 15 years old. Those 15 years he spent in Newark were really rough, and I write a lot about that early in this book.
The racial riots?
The race riots, how his family escaped that horrible situation, and how he moved to Brockton. And the other thing I learned was how he built an incredible friendship with the Petronelli brothers, and that's really the soul of this book, is that triangle that they built. As you know, as a Hagler fan,
Sure.
Those three guys really were outsiders in the boxing world at the time when Arum and King were running everything. And that's the story, how they fought that machine and they overcame it.
Bob Arum, one of the best lines I've ever heard. Yesterday I was lying, today I'm telling the truth.
I was lucky enough to interview Bob.
Yeah.
He's well into his 90s now. He loves Marvin Hagler, and he told me during our interview that Marvin was his favorite fighter of all time.
Great fighter. Wow. Dave, I'm excited to read it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dave Wedge, new book is out. Make a great gift.